Our lives have changed dramatically. It's kind of like we would have stepped on a giant roller coaster about 5 years ago and never got.
For over a few years now, Troy Landry from Swamp People has been making headlines as a fearless gator hunter. While many admired what he did, others quietly warned that Troy Landry was nothing like the man he appeared to be on TV. There were whispers and mysteries surrounding him that kept people on their toes, but many didn't listen. They believed those were just lies from jealous haters envious of his success. But what happened when those warnings turned out to be true? Join us as we unveil the hidden truths you never knew about Troy Landry. Warnings about Troy Landry. Troy Landry has kept people glued to their screens with his charm and fearless pursuit of dangerous gators. His skills earned him the title of King of the Swamps. However, some gator hunters said there was something not quite right about him. They warned the public to pay attention to the specific behaviors Troy showed. But again, most people dismissed it until it was almost too late. It was a typical beautiful day when Troy headed out into the swamps, ready to continue with his routine filming. That's when he reportedly collapsed, right there in front of the house. Troy's family was shocked to see him lying on the ground. After reviving Troy, he drank some water and insisted he was fine, but that was before they saw bloodstains in his shirt. Troy had sustained an injury and he didn't tell anyone. He wanted to go right back to hunting as if nothing had happened. This stunned everyone on set. They attempted to take him to the hospital, but Troy flat out refused. He kept saying he was okay. To him, the wound was nothing, just another day in the life of an alligator hunter. But the producers refused to let him continue. They insisted he get treatment. Insiders reported that it took considerable effort to convince Landry to go to the hospital. All he wanted that day was to chase alligators, not sit in some clinic. While many viewers enjoyed the thrilling footage and praised Troy Landry for his bravery, no one ever saw the hidden cost, the pain and exhaustion he endured just to appear on our screens day after day, just like the time he collapsed during a shoot in the bayou. While Swamp People made alligator hunting look easy, like it was simply part of their way of life, it's evident that the job came with risks of its own, dangers that could turn deadly. But men like Troy Landry were men who thought they were invincible to fear or harm. However, the truth was they weren't superhumans. Troy was finally taken to the hospital, and that's when things got scary. Everyone expected just a quick bandage and to be sent home. However, instead, the doctors ran multiple tests, including blood work, x-rays, and scans, everything. They wanted to be sure it wasn't more serious than it looked. Troy grew irritated, especially at his family, who made it seem like the cut was more than it was. He boasted in the hospital hallway, telling anyone who would listen how his family had hunted alligators for generations. He spoke proudly about the deep cuts and the bloody fights they had survived, and still they kept hunting. So why was everyone panicking about this one little scratch? However, what made everyone scared was the fact that he hadn't told them about it. Troy was known to usually hunt with at least one cameraman, a partner, or sometimes a crew member for safety. But when he had gone for this alleged hunting trip that left him wounded, he didn't tell anyone. This left everyone wondering what he was hiding and why he didn't speak about the incident. When the doctor stepped into the hospital room, insiders reported that it was kind of obvious that something was wrong. The look on the doctor's face changed the air in the room. He told Troy and his family that they had to conduct an emergency surgery immediately, as the wound was not just a gash or a scrape, but a deep puncture that appeared to be infected, possibly poisonous, and could affect Troy's brain if they didn't act quickly. Troy Landry was too shocked to speak. His wife, Bernita Landry, a quiet, calm woman who had always stood by him, broke down in tears. She didn't want to lose her husband. She didn't want anything bad to happen to him. The doctors quickly prepared to take Troy to the operating room. This was a dangerous path Troy Landry had chosen for his career. And although he was known as the King of the Swamps, even kings grow old. Even kings can get weak. News about Troy Landry's health soon spread all over the media. Reporters reached out to residents of Pierrepont, Louisiana, asking if they had any updates on Troy's condition, as his family refused to speak about the details. The residents of the small swamp town didn't say much either, but they sent prayers and wished him a quick recovery. After all, he was one of the most respected men in their community. However, a local fisherman who didn't want his name to be used stated that Troy Landry was no longer the same man the public saw on television. He still looks strong, fierce, bold, and full of energy, the man said, but honestly, Troy Landry is slowing down. Age is catching up with him. But despite all the warnings and the advice he'd been given in the past, Troy Landry refused to stop hunting gators. Troy Landry's surgery reportedly lasted over 5 hours, and when he came out, he had a faint smile on his face. Was this going to be the end of Troy Landry's legacy in the swamps? Was this finally enough for him to back away from the dangerous life he had lived for years? Keep watching to find out what happened next. Troy Landry's health scare. While this wasn't Troy Landry's first medical issue, what was worrisome was that he had just faced a health problem not too long ago, one that forced him to stay away from hunting gators for a while. A few years before the recent collapse, Troy Landry shocked his fans by revealing that he had been diagnosed with prostate cancer. Initially, no one knew about it except his family. Many were stunned to hear it. However, he told his fans that he had undergone surgery after the cancer was detected and he no longer had a prostate. Troy went on to thank the entire medical team for their excellent care and added that he just needed to rest and recover before the gator season arrived. Even from his hospital bed, Troy was already thinking about getting back into the swamps to do what he loved most, hunting gators. Fans of the Swamp People star rushed to his page, flooding the comments section with messages of love, support, and prayers for a speedy recovery. Troy later returned home, and his son, Jacob Landry, gave a reassuring update to the public, confirming that his father's health was improving. This gave fans hope that Troy would be back on their screens soon enough for the next gator season. But then something unexpected happened yet again. While still recovering from prostate cancer, a frightening accident occurred to Troy Landry. Jacob Landry went on social media to break the news that his father had been involved in an accident. This placed fans in a state of panic, as many feared the worst. Unfortunately, little detail was shared about the incident. The Landry family appeared to want to keep the matter private, only acknowledging it through Jacob's vague post, which suggested that it could have been serious or even life-threatening. However, when the next season of Swamp People aired, fans were thrilled to see that Troy Landry was not only alive, but also ready to dive back into the swamps, hunt the giant alligators, and make viewers cheer once again. However, the celebration didn't last long, as tragedy was far from over for the Landry family. Troy soon found himself at the center of yet another incident, one that stirred controversy, attracted criticism, and pushed his name right back into the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. Wondering what could have happened? Stick around to find out. The king of the swamp arrested for alligator sting. Troy Landry, the king of the swamps, was reportedly arrested. This shocking news caught fans and locals completely off guard. Many were left asking, what was he arrested for? Did he steal a gator? Was he caught fighting in public? The rumors spread fast and the questions kept coming. It was hard to believe that Troy Landry could go from national fame as the beloved alligator hunter to facing serious legal trouble. But what happened? The arrest of gator hunter Troy Landry was tied to an undercover operation involving violations of alligator hunting laws. Troy was charged with 2 counts of failing to tag an alligator on September 19 after being caught in a sting operation set up by the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, LDWF. On the day of Troy's arrest, the department received an anonymous tip about unauthorized gator lines marked with white flags on Lake Palourde, located in St. Mary Parish. The agency immediately dispatched 2 officers, Sergeant Jake Darden and Sergeant Harry Gaines. The officers arrived at the location by 6:30 a.m. and quietly inspected the area. As the caller had reported, they found several illegal lines and one had a live 7 to 8 foot alligator hooked on it. The officers didn't touch anything but remained in the area, hidden and observed. At around 1:43 p.m., a vessel approached the illegal lines. The officers, however, didn't move. They simply watched to see what would happen next. To their disbelief, it was none other than Troy Landry, America's favorite swamp star, on the boat. accompanied by a 28-year-old woman whose name was not disclosed, and a cameraman who didn't appear familiar to the officers. The officers watched silently as the woman lifted the gator line and told Landry that the alligator was a good one and that he should grab a spear. But Troy Landry didn't follow standard procedure. Instead of killing the alligator with a bang stick or tagging it correctly, he helped the woman pull the massive gator into the boat and then dispatched it. This was a clear violation of the alligator hunting law. Seeing everything unfold, the officers stepped out of hiding and approached the boat. They greeted Landry and his companions, inquiring about their activities. Landry told them they were only scouting the area and that they had permission to hunt on that property. The officers contacted the landowner, and he confirmed that Troy Landry had obtained permission to hunt on the property. This contradicted what the anonymous caller had earlier claimed. Still, the officers didn't let them leave just yet. They asked Landry if he had hunted any other alligators in the area. To their surprise, Landry responded that every gator in the boat came from the Atchafalaya Basin and had already been tagged accordingly. But Landry didn't realize what he was getting into. Sergeant Gaines then collected the tag numbers on every alligator in the vessel to cross-check with official records. To their surprise, none of the tag numbers matched the tags assigned to the location they were in. This raised suspicion, especially since the officers had just seen Landry harvest an alligator from Lake Palourde, and he hadn't tagged it as required by law. The official then asked Landry about the alligator he had taken off the line a few minutes ago, and Troy flatly denied taking any gator from that particular area. He stood firm, claiming that every alligator on the boat had been caught in the Atchafalaya Basin area. But the officials had seen everything. They told him plainly that they had been watching him the entire time, from the moment he and his crew drove their boat in, and they witnessed when he refused to spear the gator, choosing instead to haul it in alive. Defeated, Troy Landry finally admitted that he had lied and he did take the alligator from that area. This was a shocking admission. Troy Landry, the so-called king of the swamp, was caught lying during a sting operation. When asked why he didn't tag the alligator correctly, Landry explained that he couldn't find the tag that was issued to him for that particular hunt. So he used a tag from Iberville Parish instead. Trying to win the trust of the officials, he also admitted that just before encountering them, he had cut loose a dead, stiff alligator from one of his lines and let it float away, without reporting it or tagging it. Despite his attempt to cooperate, Landry and his companions were ticketed. Their boats were seized on the spot, and the improperly tagged gator was confiscated and later sold. One would have expected that someone like Troy Landry would be the first to uphold the laws of the swamp and follow every rule to the letter. But as it turned out, Troy seemed to be someone far removed from the image he had long projected. He didn't follow the rules. In Louisiana, failing to tag an alligator is a serious wildlife violation. It can carry a sentence of up to 120 days in jail and fines reaching $950. Landry was ordered to appear in court. When the news broke out, members of the public were stunned. People who had once cheered him now began questioning his integrity. Many fans who had followed his career for years started to discredit some of his past hunting claims and stories. They began to wonder how many lies he had told over the years, while we watched him on our screens, trusting him and believing in his swamp code. Troy Landry himself didn't say much about the arrest. When asked, he brushed it off and joked that he had gotten a speeding ticket the previous month. But everyone was beginning to see him differently now. The news of the alligator sting dominated headlines for weeks, mainly because Troy Landry's life revolved so deeply around hunting these creatures. It was more than just a hobby. It was his entire identity. However, after the legal incident, Landry quickly returned to his usual routine. He was even spotted filming Swamp People Season 16, posting updates regularly on his social media. While many expected the sting operation to damage his relationship with the show's producers, or even lead to the cancellation of his contract, none of that happened. Everything seemed to be swept under the rug. The court case was handled quietly behind closed doors, and the outcome was never made public. Despite the controversy, Troy's public image remained almost untouched. He continued to enjoy support from loyal fans who still saw him as the face of Swamp People. Unfortunately, tragedy didn't stop there for Troy Landry's family. More heartbreaking news for Troy Landry. Amidst all the chaos, as he tried to return to everyday life and resume filming, Troy Landry took to his social media to share something personal, something far more heartbreaking than any court case. He posted a video of his grandson sitting quietly on a couch wearing a bib and smiling gently at the camera. In the background, the voice of someone filming could be heard speaking softly to the child as he laughed. This video was captioned, "Poor baby has been on the transplant list for 2 months now." This was a moment that broke the hearts of people as Troy revealed that his grandson, Crew Hotard, who was only 8 months old, was battling end-stage liver disease. It was one of the most challenging things Troy Landry had ever discussed publicly. Crew had been born through an emergency C-section and had spent time in the ICU shortly after birth. Doctors later diagnosed him with a rare and severe liver condition known as biliary atresia, a disease that blocks or damages the bile ducts, leading to liver failure. Biliary atresia is a rare liver condition that affects infants, usually appearing within the first few weeks after birth. It happens when the bile ducts are missing, blocked, or extremely narrow. Without proper treatment, it can cause liver scarring and damage and eventually lead to liver failure. This was precisely what Troy Landry's grandson was facing. Troy went on to say that he and his family decided to share the story to raise awareness on organ donors, who save lives daily, and he called them the true heroes. Although baby Crew was going to need a liver transplant, it wasn't going to be a permanent cure, as he would have to keep coming to the hospital regularly for lifelong treatment and constant medical monitoring. The Landry family also sought public donations. They shared a link online and stated clearly that the funds raised would help baby Crew cover his health needs after insurance. They didn't stop there. They also posted frequent updates on the baby's health to keep everyone informed, especially fans who genuinely cared. Crew, who was just 8 months old, had already been on the transplant list for 2 whole months. However, on February 2025, the Landry family shared news that Crew had been called to the hospital for a liver transplant. It was a moment of hope, but sadly, they were met with disappointment. The doctors told them that the liver was the wrong size, and Crew couldn't receive it. This was sad, but life went on for the Landry family. Troy began shooting Swamp People again, but even in the middle of filming, his heart always went out to his grandson, and you could tell from his face that a part of him was still apprehensive. Then came June. This time, Crew got his transplant. The Landry family was finally happy, relieved that things were beginning to look up. But that joy didn't last long. Their happiness was short-lived as sudden rumors broke out that Troy Landry's son, Brandon Landry, had died. This came as a complete shock to fans, especially those who had been following Crew's battle. How could Brandon Landry, whose son had just received a liver transplant, be dead? Brandon had led a quiet life and had previously left Swamp People to focus on other things, away from the spotlight. But now he was reportedly dead. But what happened? Keep watching to find out. Brandon Landry was one of the cast members on the Swamp People show. However, he didn't stay long on the show before choosing to leave. But even after stepping away, his name began trending again when reports of his death made the headlines. The media even picked up the story. It was boldly written everywhere. Brandon Landry of Louisiana was dead. This was heartbreaking. Brandon wasn't just a former cast member, he was part of the central family dynamic on the show. As rumors of Brandon Landry's death spread, something even more surprising occurred, revealing some Landry family secrets. During the deep dive into whether Brandon Landry was truly alive or dead, it was finally discovered that Brandon is the son of Bernita Landry and her former husband, Gerald Hotard. He wasn't Troy Landry's biological son, he was his stepson. However, through Bernita's marriage to Troy, Brandon became a solid part of the Landry household and was introduced on screen as one of the Gator hunting crew. This was unexpected because most fans naturally assumed Brandon was Troy's son. The way they worked together, how they joked, and the comfort between them made it feel like a genuine father-son bond. Still, rumors about Brandon's death refused to die down. Videos of Brandon Landry and Swamp People were being posted online with crying and sad emojis. Who could forget Brandon Landry, who fearlessly helped haul in some of the biggest gators in the early episodes? He was a calm presence, a strong hand, and a reliable member of the team. But the question still hung in the air. Was he dead? The public reportedly started sending condolence messages to the Landry family as the rumors of their son continued to spread rapidly. However, it was later revealed that Brandon Landry of Swamp People was hale, alive, and healthy. He was living peacefully in Barrack, Louisiana, with his wife and children. However, another individual named Brandon Landry had died, and he was also from Louisiana. The confusion surrounding whether Swamp People's Brandon Landry was dead came from a simple but unfortunate case of mistaken identity. The deceased Brandon Landry from Louisiana was just 24 years old at the time of his death. He had graduated from Live Oak High School and had no relation to the Swamp People series or the History Channel in any way. Meanwhile, the Swamp People's Brandon Landry was 48 years old during the time the rumor broke, and contrary to what was circulating online, he was still very much alive. Brandon Landry later returned to Swamp People in Season 4 during the time Hurricane Isaac happened. The arrival of Hurricane Isaac, however, delayed the start of Louisiana's alligator hunting season. As a result, Troy's longtime partner, Clint Bowerman, had to take a step back to focus on other pressing matters. This opened up the opportunity for Troy to turn to his stepson, Brandon, and invite him back to work with him in the swamp, hunting gators as a family again. Despite all that Troy Landry has faced, the scandals, the scars, the rumors, the public backlash, and the personal tragedies, he still stood tall and firm like a man of grit, molded by the swamp itself. He's not just known as the king of the swamps because of his unmatched alligator hunting skills. No, Troy earned that title because of how he has soared stronger through every single challenge thrown at him. But who exactly is Troy Landry? How did he achieve his current position? Stay with us to find out. The true story of Troy Landry. One of the most popular cast members of the Swamp People series is undoubtedly Troy Landry, famously known as the King of the Swamps. He's made a name for himself as one of the most noble and fearless gator hunters in the Louisiana swamps. But this wasn't something new for him. Troy Landry came from a long line of crocodile hunters, shrimpers, trappers, moss peddlers, and lumberjacks. Troy Landry was born in Pierre Part, Louisiana in 1960 to Duffy and Myrtle Landry. His father, Duffy, was a respected fisherman who also ran a seafood distribution business during his time. Remarkably, Troy Landry is the fifth generation in his family to own and run an alligator hunting business. So yes, this was something that ran deeply in his bloodline. Troy's gator hunting skills were something he got naturally, as he was raised right in the thick of it. He often mentioned that growing up with his family, they hunted alligators not for show but for survival. The meat was food on their table. But things have taken a different turn for Troy Landry over the years. He and his family now hunt not only for meat but also sell the hides, and they've managed to build an entire show around their life in the swamp. It has become both a business and a legacy. Although Troy Landry is best known for alligator hunting, the job itself only takes up about 2 months of the year. This is because the gator hunting season in the Atchafalaya River Basin swamp only lasts a few days each year. However, Troy participates in both the East Zone and West Zone seasons, which totals about 60 days of hunting annually. But he doesn't do it alone. Troy Landry does it with his entire family, including his wife, Bernita Landry, and his sons, Jacob and Chase Landry. His stepson, Brandon Hodard, sometimes joins them as well. Landry's broad knowledge of the Louisiana swamps and his incredible skill as a gator hunter have earned him the nickname King of the Swamp. However, once the alligator hunting season is over, Troy spends his time focusing on his other businesses. But alligator hunting remains the most profitable of them all. He's also earned a large sum of money from appearing on Swamp People, which he joined back in 2010. Troy Landry is one of the fans' favorites, and his catchphrase, "Shoot 'em," has become wildly popular, featured on various types of Swamp People merchandise and memorabilia. Troy also admitted in an interview that the Swamp People show had changed his life in a profoundly positive way. He said there are thousands of other alligator hunters in the world, but he was fortunate to be chosen as part of the show. The fame and recognition he's received have been both overwhelming and encouraging, as they brought a lot of positive attention toward gator hunters and helped to increase the sale of alligator meat. According to Troy Landry, ever since the Swamp People show began airing, the demand for alligator meat has gone up, even though there hasn't been much of an increase in demand for the hides or skins. Still, he was thankful for the interest it generated. Troy Landry also expressed concern about how the show might portray the actual killing of alligators. He was initially scared because the process can be a bit graphic and intense, but he was relieved that the producers didn't focus on how the gators were killed. Instead, the spotlight remained on the hunt itself. Swamp People is an American reality television series that first aired on the History Channel on August 2010. The show focuses on the real-life activities of alligator hunters living in the swamps of the Atchafalaya River Basin who hunt American alligators for a living. The show typically spans a 30-day season, where hunters embark on a high-risk venture that relies heavily on skill, experience, and the unpredictable whims of weather, all within the strict regulations of wildlife law. During the show, each hunter is given a certain number of tags, which must be attached to the gators they kill. Once a hunter runs out of tags, their season is over, and they can no longer kill any more alligators for the rest of that year. During this short but intense 30-day window, many of these hunters earn most of their annual income. The ultimate goal is always to tag out before the season ends. However, the job doesn't come without its share of danger. Risk is always a part of the hunt, but despite it all, one man has continuously proven himself to be the true king of the swamps, Troy Landry. Away from alligator hunting, Troy Landry is also a big family man. He has been married to his wife, Bernita Landry, since September 1981. The couple shares 2 sons, Chase Landry and Jacob Landry. Troy is also the stepfather to Brandon Hodard. And through all the highs and lows, Troy has shown over and over again that he is worthy of the title King of the Swamps. Troy is much more than just a television personality. Troy Landry has become a symbol for many, representing resilience, the ability to stand tall after being knocked down. What do you think of Troy Landry's resilience and determination to keep hunting gators despite the several warnings he has received? Let's hear from you in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and check out the video popping up on your screen.